More about what Yisker. Yisker is the memorial service. We're going to do that in the middle today. So I'm really glad you asked that. If you're really, I also don't like to force people to do things that they don't want to do. So if you're really not comfortable being inside and you think that it's going to bring bad luck to your parents, then I respect that belief and that's your custom. And if you'd like to walk out, please do so and try to keep it quiet and brief and come right back in when we're done. But if you don't have that custom, I wouldn't advise adopting it. I think it's a better custom to stay in and to appreciate that maybe if you have no one to remember, other people in the room do. That's important. I'll explain more. I'll explain more about Yisker when we get to it. But Yisker is for people who passed away at any time, including many, many years ago. Right? It's usually thought of as something that you remember people you knew. So my parents are alive, thankfully, but I remember my grandparents. No, I don't have any grandparents left, so I use it as an opportunity to remember, especially the grandparents I was really close with and really loved and missed terribly. But there may be other friends, partners, other close relatives. So it doesn't have to be within the past year. All right, we can start. So welcome to everyone. My name is Rabbi Josh Kulp. This is the learner's service or Nisayon. This is the last time we're going to be having this on this Yom Kippur. And the idea here today is to do a mixture of learning, experiencing, trying to explain what Yom Kippur is about, what we're doing here, what the nature of the prayers. We are also going to be doing some praying, some tefillot in Hebrew. Sammy Moses will be leading us in them. We will be reading the Torah, and we will also be doing Yisker at that time. There are Yisker booklets up front. If you didn't get one right yet, we'll pass them out when we get to Yisker, so don't worry about that right now. And really, I want this to be an experience where people have an opportunity to ask questions, to say what's on their mind. We're going to try to stick to the format that we've done for the other days, which is about an hour and a half, and a mixture of learning and praying and listening to the Torah reading. But I really mean it when I say that, I'm also willing to stay after if there are more questions. I want this to be a time where you can really explore what it is we're doing and try to get a better understanding of the nature of the day and to experience some growth through that as well. So we're going to start on page 55. We can start with some learning first. I wanted to just look at some of the verses to talk about what is Yom Kippur. Last night we did not talk. We talked a little bit about repentance, about tshuva, and about confession. We learned a little bit about the Kol Nidre, but we didn't learn about one of the main aspects of Yom Kippur, obviously, is this is a day where we don't eat or drink, right? That probably is the most, when someone were to ask you, what is Yom Kippur? One of the first things you would say is, it's a fast day. It's a day we don't eat or drink. And I wanted to look at the verses about that. So that's on page 55. I want to show you where that comes from and maybe talk a little bit about the meaning of fasting, in particular of not eating. So if you turn to page 55, this is the Torah mentions this on a couple occasions, but the main part is part of our Torah reading today. I'm just going to read them to you in English. The Lord spoke to Moses saying, mark the 10th day of this 7th month. Right? We are now not in the first month. Biblically speaking, we're in the 7th month. We spoke about that on Rosh Hashanah. As the Day of Atonement, which is the translation from Yom HaKippurim. It shall be a sacred occasion for you. You shall afflict yourselves. Right? The word in Hebrew is v'initem et nafshotechem. Initem, I bolded there, sounds like to afflict oneself. Going on, I'm just going to skip a couple words. Indeed, any person who does not afflict himself throughout the day shall be cut off from kin. It shall be a Shabbat, a Sabbath of complete rest for you, and you shall practice self-affliction. So several times in those verses, we don't ever read the word you shouldn't eat or something like that. All we read is you shall afflict yourselves. Okay, that's what it says in the Torah about what you do on Yom Kippur, which brings along the question, what does it mean to afflict yourselves? So let's just think it out. What could that mean? If you have no idea and you're just reading this verse, what do you think afflict yourself could mean? Punish yourself, such as in what way? What would you imagine?
To feel guilty.
Okay, feel guilty. Physical self-harm, right? If I'm reading these verses, I might think that these are practices like whipping yourself. Now, I don't think they probably mean permanently damage yourself, like cut off a limb or something like that. But the words themselves could mean some kind of physical punishment to oneself, very active. But the rabbis don't really read it that way. I certainly don't read it that way. Not don't really, but they don't read it that way. But I wanted to look at a couple other verses, and I want to talk a little bit also about like what's the point of fasting, right? I get asked that question a lot. It's not an easy question. I want to think about that a little bit with you today. We find people fasting in the Bible for a lot of reasons. So, for instance, in Jonah, which is the book that we read during the Haftorah in the afternoon service, right? We're not going to be doing an afternoon service, but if you go to the main service, they read the book Jonah. Jonah is a prophet. He goes to the city of Nineveh, and he tells them to repent, an Assyrian city. So I'm reading from the bottom of the page. He made his way into the city, the distance of 1 day's walk, and proclaimed 40 days more, and Nineveh shall be overthrown. The people of Nineveh believed God. They proclaimed a fast. So they fast. And great and small alike put on sackcloth. So it's interesting here, two things. One is great and small probably refers to adults and children, perhaps young children. Sackcloth, I don't know. I've never worn sackcloth, right? But what would wearing sackcloth do to you? It would make you very uncomfortable, I think very itchy. I imagine Nineveh is everything in the Middle East is very hot most of the time. And wearing sackcloth on a hot day would make you extremely uncomfortable. Small children, I want to come back to that detail, which is a little unusual, a little weird. When the news reached the king of Nineveh, he rose from the throne, took off his robe, put on sackcloth, and sat in ashes. Again, a symbolic act of mourning. And he had the word cried through Nineveh by decree of the king and his noblemen, no human or animal, a flock or herd shall taste anything. They shall not graze and they shall not drink water. They shall be covered with sackcloth, human and animal, and shall cry mightily to God. Right, so what do you think is the point of all this? What's the point of making animals not eat? It's very strange, right? Let's assume when you don't feed an animal, the animal is not going to know why you're not feeding, right? If you say to, I have a dog, I love my dog, he's really dumb, but even a smart dog, if you have a very smart dog and you say, I don't know, Rover, I'm not feeding you today, it's Yom Kippur. Rover's not going to know that next year he should be better, right? Rover's just going to be hungry and angry, and what might Rover do if he's hungry? I don't know about you, but cry, scream, bark a lot, make a lot of noise, right? Obviously, a dog, an animal, no animals, I think, have a comprehension of a spiritual meaning of fasting. But if you were to do all this, even with babies, right? A baby, if you don't feed a child for a day, I mean, it's not good. I'm not advising you not to feed a child for the day. The child will probably survive. A child can survive for a day without food. But what's going to happen? What's that child going to do? Cry and scream all day long. They are not going, a 1-year-old is not going to understand. A 6-month-old, I mean, maybe at 6, 7, a child could begin to comprehend a little bit about what's going on, but even then, only a little bit, right? But what you're going to have is a lot of noise, right? So in the book of Jonah, and it sounds like a very kind of an ideology that fasting is to create physical distress, I don't think permanent distress. I don't think anything's advising like some permanent damage to one's body, but temporary damage and temporary distress so that people will feel pain, and that's supposed to invoke a message in God that we're needy, we're humbling ourselves, and that pain is supposed to be something that we hope God responds to. I mean, I think that's the only way I can comprehend why animals and little children would be made to go through that experience. Now, but I want to look at what the rabbis do with this, because as I've said before, our traditions come not from directly from the Bible, but from the rabbis' understanding and mitigating and sort of reading through the Bible. So we're going to skip the verse from Isaiah for now. We might come back to that a little bit later. I want to read from the bottom of page 56. There's a passage from the Babylonian Talmud. The sages taught. The verse states, "And this shall be a statute, like a law to you forever. In the 7th month, on the 10th day of the month, you shall afflict your souls," or afflict yourself, another translation. "I might have thought that one should sit in the sun or in the cold to suffer and afflict his soul. Therefore, the continuation of the verse states, 'And you shall not do any labor.' This teaches that just as prohibited labor is a mitzvah that requires one to sit and do nothing, as one is commanded to refrain from action, so too affliction of one's soul is also a mitzvah, a commandment requiring one to sit and do nothing. One is not commanded to be proactive in order to afflict his soul. Rather, one must refrain from specified actions such as eating and drinking." So the way the rabbis sort of work this out is that on Yom Kippur, we don't actively do things to make ourselves, cause ourselves pain. What we do is a very sort of a subtler refraining from engaging in particular pleasures. It's much more, I conceive of it as much more internal. We at our synagogue and most Jews in the world, you won't see people like crying out in physical pain, right? Not eating for a day, I don't know about you, it's discomforting. It's not the end of the world. I survive. The next day I eat. You get hungry, maybe get a little tired, a little grumpy, a little grouchy, but that's about it. I don't personally feel extreme pain, and probably most of the people I know don't feel extreme pain. It's a day that I think the rabbis shaped to be more internal, more reflective, right? As opposed to some kind of public spectacle. You could imagine, it's almost hard to imagine, but imagine Yom Kippur was a day where instead of just a sitter coming in here, you got like a bull rush and you all sat there and sort of whipped yourselves, right? There are actually places that do have engaged in those kinds of behaviors throughout Jewish history. It's very minor, but instead, right, you can't really even like look at another person. Some of you may be fasting, some of you may not. I can't look at you and tell, right? You know whether you're fasting or not, but I don't. No one else knows, right? It's not something that can be observed from the outside. So that's the way the rabbis shaped it. There's another text that talks about children fasting. The practice for children is only to begin fasting when they can begin to comprehend the meaning of what they're doing, because just to not eat is not the way we think about this practice on Yom Kippur, right? It is supposed to be something that you can understand and grow from and grasp the meaning of intellectually, right? And a child, for the rabbis, it begins around, bar mitzvah age, somewhere around 10, 11. This is what I did with my own children. At 10 and 11, I said, when they were little, I said no ice cream, no snacks, things like that. That was, I fed them lunch and dinner, but it wasn't a day where we're eating candy and things like that. Shouldn't be eating candy any day. But and as they got older, I would say to them, today, we're certainly not having dinner after Kol Nidre when they get older, and maybe next year you won't have breakfast. Sort of practice. And as they got older, they were able to understand. By 11 or 12, I think most kids can understand this is a ritual. You will eat again tomorrow, and there's a meaning to it. And that's the practice, is just to lay them out there. The practice is on Yom Kippur. The things that the rabbis say that you're not supposed to do are eating and drinking, which is considered one. You're not supposed to wear leather shoes. I won't go too into that. It's a little like leather shoes used to be the only comfortable shoes. So you had either leather or wood, which I suppose was really uncomfortable. Nowadays, you might notice I have my running sneakers on. It's a bit of a paradox. They are more comfortable than my leather shoes, and I'm always a little torn. I can't really walk barefoot to synagogue, and I think it would be distracting. So I wear my sneakers, but there's a prohibition of washing, but bathing in like a pleasurable washing. Like if you go to the bathroom, you should wash your hands afterwards, but you shouldn't go to like the sauna on Yom Kippur. It would be hard to do when you're fasting, or like take a luxurious bath. My practice, I don't shower on Yom Kippur. Shower the day before, no big harm. Sexual relations are prohibited on Yom Kippur, and like other types of cleansing. We don't really do this, like anointing, right? No one really anoints, but if you, like, that would be taking some like oil and rubbing it on your skin to help your dried skin. That's not a normal thing we do all that often anymore. If you have some real problem and you need to put some lotion on, I don't think it's such a big deal. But the main things are not eating and not drinking. Now, what does this do to us? Like, maybe I ask for you guys. What happens when you don't eat or drink? What's the point? Yeah, not having coffee if you're a coffee drinker is a tough one. It gives you a headache. Yeah, but why? Why do that? Like, what does it do? This is a harder one. I don't have an easy answer for this. Like, I don't have like a one authoritative answer why we fast.
You're focusing on something else instead of on your next meal.
Okay, so that's definitely one of the things on Yom Kippur. We're not focusing on eating, and we don't have to rush home to have a nice big meal like we do on Rosh Hashanah, and allows us to focus on something else. I think that, to me, that's like a big part of it, that we withdraw from our own bodily needs, and we try to think about something else. That is a bit of a paradox, you got to admit, right? When you don't eat, you end up thinking more about the fact that you're not eating. And so I don't think anyone has not experienced that, this question of like, I'm not supposed to eat because, like you said, I'm supposed to focus on praying, but here I am at synagogue and I'm hungry all the time. And I don't have an easy answer for that, right? I can tell you, well, try not to think about being hungry, but it doesn't always work that way. But it is a paradox. But at least in some level, we say to ourselves, today is a day where I'm just going to focus on something else besides my own bodily needs. Other thoughts?
Your external pleasures are limited. And like you mentioned, just focus on I guess, the soul, the internal component of the human being.
Yeah, there is still that residue, right, of you shall afflict yourself to be a day where you don't have that pleasure of eating, right? It certainly, I think, for most people, works to make us appreciate more the days in which we do eat. Right. Nowadays, I think there's a lot of people who do this intermittent fasting. It's very popular. I've heard at least people who do that. But I imagine that also reminds you that like eating is a pleasure, something not to be taken for granted, and helps you appreciate the rest of your life in which you do eat in a normal fashion.
I would say, if one of the purposes of the holidays is to help us rise above and be better people in our relationship with each other and with God. I would say perhaps one of the things that gets in the way of us being better people is our human faith desires.
Yeah.
Whether it be greed or wanting to take care of ourselves above put ourselves ahead of others. So by fasting and refraining from those other activities, I suggest that it's a practice in rising above those behaviors, those automatic behaviors that tend to occupy us or run us throughout the year that gets in trouble.
Yeah, I think that's a beautiful. We'll finish with that last reasoning. I think is a beautiful. They say that human beings. I mean, poetically speaking, we say human beings are somewhat like angels and somewhat like human beings, somewhat like animals. Excuse me. And like animals can't have that. Like an animal acts mostly by instinct, and human beings often act like instinct. But we also have things that we can do that we can push ourselves to go beyond our sort of physical limits. And that, I think, is a lesson in what it means to be a human. To analogize again to like running, I think that they've tested like who can run longer, a horse or a human. And usually if you go long distances, the human ends up winning. Because when the horse is done, the horse is done. You can't say to the horse, only 2 more miles and you'll be done. The horse won't comprehend that. Horse is obviously much faster on short distances, but only a human being can see that further goal, that longer goal. I mean, you might say only a human being would be dumb enough to run long distances for no other reason besides to say that they could do that. But that is, I do think that there's a lesson there for, like, we can rise above our animal instincts. We can act in kind ways to other people that animals who usually act more, I don't mean to disparage dolphins or high-level animals. I love dolphins and monkeys and chimpanzees and things like that. And probably some of them have some of those behaviors. So I don't want to make too stark of a difference. But for the most part, animals, like small children, are very selfish. And as we get older, we learn to look beyond our own needs and to look to the needs of other people. That's an important part of what it means to be human. And I think that fasting for one day here and there is part of that lesson. I want to finish with one little text learning that I promise you we're going to go on, and that is on page 57 about the joy of Yom Kippur. Right? Yom Kippur, right, according to the second text there, Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel said, there were no days of joy in Israel greater than the 15th of Av, which I'm not going to talk about, and Yom Kippur. And Yom Kippur, according to the third text there, is a day of joy. It is not a day of mourning. The fasting that we do today is not supposed to make us sad. It is supposed to make us happy. We are supposed to feel confident and looking forward to a new year on Yom Kippur. We wear white. We dress nicely because it's a day of joyfulness. It's not a day where we dwell on fear and death, although we'll talk a little bit about that. But it's a day that we rejoice in the fact that we made it through another year and we have an opportunity to start a new year afresh, to be forgiven for the things that we did wrong and to look forward to making amends. And that's an amazing opportunity. Imagine if you had an opportunity to automatically, just one day, wipe out all the difficulties you've had in relationships with other people and to start anew, right? And it worked, and it really, really worked. Imagine you had that. Like, you think about people you've had trouble with in the past that you wish you didn't have that trouble with, and all of a sudden you got one day and it's all clean and you can start anew, right? That's what Yom Kippur is supposed to make us feel. It's a great opportunity to change ourselves and to cleanse ourselves. Not just to atone, but also to wipe the slate clean going forward so that we can have better lives next year. I think it's a beautiful day, and the rabbis don't in any way conceive of it as a day of mourning. Now, they talk about like women going out and dancing in the field in white dresses. It's like a Sadie Hawkins Day. I think it's a British thing. It's not you've heard of that? It's like, I don't think people do that anymore, but like a day of, we're not going to do that. We don't have to wear white dresses and dance in the fields, maybe next year. But it's a day of joy. And I hope that as we are very serious, but part of what we feel today is also a day of great celebration. All right, we are going to move into some tefillot now. We're going to start on page 58. We're going to start with the Baruch Hu, and then we're going to continue with the Shema on page 59, and then we will continue with the Amidah. So please rise on page 58. The Baruch Hu is a call for prayer. The Shema is really one of the key recitations of biblical verses, and then we're going to do the Amidah together as we've been doing in the past couple days as well.
Baruch Hu et Adonai Amvorach. Baruch Adonai Amvorach Le'olam Va'ed. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod leolam vaed.
Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavecha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol me'odecha
והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלבתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך ורתם להיות על ידיך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך.
We're at the Amida part on page 59 in the middle of the page.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Elohei Avoteinu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak Elohei Yaakov Ha'el HaGadol HaGibor ve'Hanora El Elyon Gomel Chasadim Tovim Ekonei Akol Vezocher Chasdei Avot Umevi Goel Livnei V'neihem Leman Shemo Be'ahava Zochreinu L'chaim Melech Hafetz B'chaim V'chotvenu B'sefer HaChaim V'chotvenu B'sefer HaChaim Le'manecha Elohim Chaim Melech Ozer U'Moshiach U'Magen Baruch atah Adonai Magen Avraham Atah Gibor leolam Adonai Mechaim etim atah Rav lehoshia Mechalkel l'chaim bechesed Mechayim etim ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לישני עפר, מי כמוך בעל גבורות, ומיתו מלך, מלך מימית ומחיה, ומצמיח ישועה, מי כמוך אב הרחמים, זוכר יצוריו לחיים ברחמים, ונאמנתה לחיות מתים. ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי המתים. נריצך ונקדישך כסוד שיח שרפי קודש, המקדישים שמך בקודש, שמך בקודש, אוי 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 אוי, ככתוב על יד נביאך, וקרא זה זה ויאמר, קדוש 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 אדוני צבאות, ובכל הארץ כבודו, kevodo malei olam. Mishartav shoalim zelazeh. Aye mekom kevodo. Leumatam baruch yomeru. Oy 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 oy. Baruch kevod. Kevod Adonai. Mimkomo. Mimkomo hu yifen berachamim. Ve'achon am yachadim shemo. Erev avoker bechol yom tamid. Pamayim be'ahava shema omrim. Oy 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 oy. Shema Yisrael. Adonai Eloheinu. Adonai echad. Hu Eloheinu. Hu Avinu. Hu Malkeinu. Hu Moshienu. Vehu Yashmienu berachamav shenit. Le'enei kol chai. Li'yos lachem le'elohim. Ani Adonai Eloheichem. Adir Adirenu, Adonai Adoneinu, Ma'adir Shimcha bechol haaretz, ve'Adonai lemelech al kol haaretz, bayom hahu yiyeh Adonai echad, u'shemo echad, u'vedivrei kodshecha katuv le'mor, Yimloch Adonai le'olam, Elohai Tzion, ledor vador, ledor vador, Hallelujah, ledor vador, ledor vador, ledor vador, nagid God lecha, ledor vador, ledor vador. Ledor vador nagid God lecha, ulenetzach netzachim, ulenetzach netzachim, kedushatcha, kedushatcha nagdish, ulenetzach netzachim, ulenetzach netzachim, kedushatcha, kedushatcha nagdish. Ledor vador, ledor vador, ledor vador nagid God lecha, ledor vador, ledor vador, ledor vador nagid God lecha, v'shivchacha Eloheinu mipinu lo yamush le'olam le'olam va'ed, ki el melech gadol gadol v'kadosh gadol v'kadosh ata.
Let's turn to page 65. We'll sing Sim Shalom together, and then we'll continue on the next page, on page 66 as well.
Sim, sim, sim shalom, sim shalom tova uvracha ba'olam. Sim, sim, sim shalom tova uvracha. Chen v'chesed v'rachamim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael amecha. Barucheinu kavinu kulanu ke'echad ve'or panecha. Sim, sim, sim shalom tova uvracha ba'olam. Sim, sim, sim shalom tova uvracha. Hein v'chesed v'rachamim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael amecha. Barucheinu avinu kulanu ke'echad be'or panecha. Ki ve'or panecha natata lanu, Adonai Eloheinu, Torat Chaim ve'avat chesed, tzedakah uvracha ve'rachamim ve'chayim, ve'shalom ve'shalom, sim shalom, sim shalom tova uvracha ba'olam, sim shalom tova uvracha. V'tov beinecha levarech et amecha Yisrael v'chol eitu v'chol shah b'shlomecha. Sim shalom tova uvracha ba'olam, sim shalom tova uvracha.
Top of page 66.
Besefer Chaim bracha ve'shalom ufarnasa tova, eni zocher v'eni katev lefanecha, eni zocher v'eni katev lefanecha. Anachnu b'chol amcha beit Yisrael l'chayim tovim u'leshalom, l'chayim tovim u'leshalom. Baruch atah Adonai oseh hashalom.
Amen. I need a volunteer to open up our ark. Any volunteers? There give me a few volunteering opportunities, so you've done a lot. Want to get someone new, participatory, someone who hasn't volunteered. It's very easy to open the ark. Come on up. Thank you very much. There's going to be a few more for aliyot and lifting up the Torah, so get your hands ready to volunteer. And we're on Avinu Malkeinu on page 66. Thank you.
Avinu Malkeinu, Chonenu Vaneinu. Avinu Malkeinu, Chonenu Vaneinu, Ki ein banu maasim. Aseh imanu, tzedakah v'chesed. Aseh imanu, tzedakah v'chesed, ve'yoshienu. Aseh imanu, tzedakah v'chesed. Aseh imanu, tzedakah v'chesed, ve'yoshienu.
Thank you. All right, you may be seated. We're going to continue with the Kaddish Shalem, and then we're going to go into the Torah service.
Yitkadal v'gadash shemei rabba,
Amen.
ve'amad yivrach yirtei v'amlich machutei, b'chaychon mechon v'chaychon b'Yisrael, b'algad l'zman kariv mru. Amen.
Amen.
Yehi shmei rabba mevorach, ve'olam le'amei amaya, yitzbarach. Yitzbarach v'yishtabach, v'yitzbar v'yitzbar v'naseh v'yidar 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 shmei shabrichu. Leilo leila mikol b'chatav v'shiratat, v'yishuchatav v'nachamatat d'amei v'amiru. Amen. Titrabal tzolton v'ton l'cho, Beit Yisrael kodamu hanishmai v'miru. Amen.
Amen.
Yesh shalom rabbi shemai v'chaim aleinu v'kol Yisrael v'miru. Amen. Oseh shalom v'yaseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'miru. Amen.
Amen. All right, we're going to move on in a minute to the Torah service, but I wanted to talk a little bit about the Torah reading before we move on. So the Torah reading for Yom Kippur is from the 16th chapter of the book of Leviticus, and it talks about the ritual that was performed in the temple on Yom Kippur. Obviously, this is a ritual we don't perform anymore. A lot of it is similar to other rituals that involved animal sacrifice, but there is one unique element that everybody has focused on for thousands of years, and that is what's known as the scapegoat in English. The word scapegoat comes from the translation of, I think it was Tyndale, who translated the Bible in the early 1500s into English, and the word for the goat in Hebrew, it's the goat sent to Azazel, became scapegoat, and that's where we get the modern English word scapegoat. It is a very strange ritual. Briefly, 2 goats are chosen. They're supposed to be identical goats. On one of them, and then Aaron, who was the high priest in the time of the Torah, the first high priest, takes lots. On one of the lots it says La Adonai, for God, and on the other lot it says La Azazel, for, I'll try to explain a little bit what Azazel is. He puts one on the head of each goat. The goat that gets La Adonai is offered as a sacrifice, and the goat that is La Azazel, for Azazel, is sent out into the wilderness. According to the rabbis, the goat eventually dies in the wilderness itself. The goat that is sacrificed is pretty normal. The goat that is sent away is a strange ritual, there are many, many explanations for it. Part of it seems to be a symbolic sending away, cleansing ritual to symbolically send away our sins to the wilderness, which is sort of a place where no one lives, and to symbolically cleanse ourselves of our sins through this ritual. But I wanted to read just a little passage. This is from a Machzor, an introduction to the Machzor written by Rabbi Jonathan Sacks, the late Rabbi Jonathan Sacks, who was the chief rabbi of England, and wrote many, many beautiful, if you ever want to read beautiful interpretations of Judaism, Rabbi Sacks is probably the most eloquent explainer of Judaism in the modern world. I mean, he's no longer alive. He points out that there's a lot of similarities between the 2 goats and Jacob and Esau, right? The 2 rival twins in the Bible. And in the beginning, I'm not going to read the whole passage, but in the beginning, Jacob is constantly trying to steal Esau's blessings, right? We get several passages of that. If you're familiar with some of the stories, he twice steals the blessing. Esau is the firstborn. He's supposed to get more blessings, and Jacob tricks him out of it 2 times. One, he gives him some porridge and says, you can sell me your birthright for this porridge. Esau is very hungry. And the second time, a famous episode, he pretends to be Esau. He puts some, like Esau, everyone knows he was very hairy. So Jacob puts some wool on his hand and goes to Isaac, his father, who's blind, and he pretends to be Esau. But in the beginning of his life, the main thing to remember is Jacob wants what Esau has, what Esau has. Later in his life, after going through a period of exile, in which he marries two sisters, eventually Jacob comes back, and he lets Esau bless him, and eventually Jacob gets a new name, and he gives blessings back to Esau. And what Rabbi Sacks writes about this, comparing the 2, he says the following. It's beautiful. I'm going to read some of his words. Putting all of this together, we arrive at a dramatic conclusion. The worst sin it caused the flood is violence. The greatest source of violence in Genesis is sibling rivalry. One person wanting the blessing that rightly belongs to another. The antidote to violence is to stop wanting to be someone else and to be content to be yourself. I'm going to read that sentence again because it's very moving. The antidote to violence is to stop wanting to be someone else and to be content to be yourself. Jacob and Esau were able to meet, embrace, and peaceably go their separate ways as soon as Jacob was content to be himself and no longer wanted Esau's blessings. So it is with us. We can live at peace with the world when we are at peace with ourselves. If we seek to cure ourselves of the will to sin, we must let go of the desire to have someone else's blessings. The ritual of the 2 identical goats, one of which was sent away bearing with it our sins, can then be seen to symbolize the two identities that live in every troubled heart. The one that is myself and the one that is not myself. When I learn to let the not myself go, as the goat was let go on Yom Kippur, I find inner peace and can live in peace with the world. Right? I think those are beautiful messages. I don't know about you, but I often think very poignantly about me and about other people I know who it's one of the hardest things to do, is just to be happy with who you are, with the blessings that you have been given. The rabbis teach us, Ezehu Ashir, who is wealthy, Hasameach Bechalko, somebody who is happy with that which he has. I think that's one of the most profound lessons in life. And the way Rabbi Sachs reads this ritual is that we send away the things that we can't be and that we're not. And we make peace with our inner selves, with who we are, the things. It doesn't mean that we don't try to be the best inner self that we can be. Right? That's important, right? Being who you are doesn't mean you stop trying to improve who you are, but you realize what are the things that you can give to others, what are the things that you can achieve, and you focus on those, and you don't focus on the things that other people have, whether they be material blessings or physical blessings or any other blessings that other people have. We all have very positive aspects to our lives. And when we focus on bringing out the best of ourselves, we can send away that goat to somewhere else, to let that goat be somewhere else. To me, that's a very beautiful, powerful message on Yom Kippur. I don't know if it's the original meaning. I always like original meanings, but I also like the beautiful meaning that some of these texts bring to our lives. So we're going to go on to Torah reading. We are a couple technical notes. For whatever reason, there are a couple of the Hebrew texts disappeared mysteriously from the PDF when these were printed by the synagogue. I have no idea what happened. If any of you are computer technicians, maybe you could explain it later on. But on page 68 and 69, you'll see that there are two passages in the Hebrew missing. It's not the end of the world. If you would like, there are machzorim up here. I can help you find the page. And if not, you can just listen along. But we can, maybe some of the ushers could pass a few of those out, the machzors, and I'll find what page they are when we get to it. The other thing is we need a few volunteers. The idea of the learners for aliyot and to lift and wrap the Sefer Torah. The idea of the learner's minion is this is supposed to be a safe spot where you can learn new things and feel comfortable with maybe not knowing exactly how to do them. So if you'd like to have an aliyah, even if it's your first time, we're happy to try to help you. We want you to feel comfortable, and we can help you read the Hebrew. I think there's even a transliteration of the Hebrew. Is there a translation of it? Yes, there's a transliteration of the Hebrew if your Hebrew reading isn't so good. And this is a space where, like, if you don't do it right, no worries, right? No one's going to feel any different about you. Like, that's the only way you can learn to do things, is to try new things. So are there, with all that, pep talk, can I get 3 volunteers to have an aliyah? It can be any male, female, whatever. 1, 2, and I need a third? Third. Okay. Thank you very much. We also need someone to lift the Torah. It is not, Jeff, you know which Torah we're using? Yeah, okay, thank you. We have our expert Torah person in the back. So it's not as heavy as last time because it's sort of in the middle, so it's balanced, but still a heavy Sefer Torah. So if you're someone who can lift a heavy object, can you volunteer? Okay, and someone to wrap the Sefer Torah. This does not require any heavy lifting. Someone to wrap it. It'd be nice to get a woman to do something here too. I mean, it's up to you guys, but I'm very egalitarian, believe in equal participation. So, anyone volunteer? Okay, thank you very much. Okay, and you want to open the ark? Okay, we'll get someone to open the ark. So I think we're all down. I don't remember who I gave each aliyah to. So I think it was 1, 2, 3, right? All right, so just come up. I'll call you up by your Hebrew name. Not right this second. I'll tell you when to come up. We're going to continue on page 66.
Ein kamocha va'elohim Adonai ve'ein kemasecha malchutecha malchut העמים וממשלתך בכל דור ודור. אדוני מלך, אדוני מלך, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. אדוני עוז לעמו ייתן, אדוני יברך את עמו בשלום. אב הרחמים, היטיבה וצאנך את ציון. תבנה חומות ירושלים, כי בכל לבבות בטחנו. מלך אל רם ונישא, אדון עולמים.
Please rise. Our arcs can be open on page 67 in the middle of the page.
ויהי בצהרון ויאמר משה קומה אדוני ויפוצו אויביך וינוסו משנאיך מפניך כי מציון תצא תורה כי מציון תצא תורה ודבר אדוני מירושלים ברוך שנתן תורה תורה ברוך שנתן תורה תורה לעמו ישראל בקדושתו. אדוני אדוני אל רחום וחנון ערך אפיים ורב חסד ואמת נוצר חסד לאלפים נושא עוון ופשע וחטא ונקם.
Just a word about the middle one over there, about walking around with a Sefer Torah. We're only going to do it one time, and they're like, for some people, kissing the Torah is a practice. For some people, it's really important, but it's like, Faye, you're going to have to close this. It's okay. That's all right. The middle one, yeah. So we're only going to walk. Let's see if this works. If not, we'll change it next year. That if you want to, if it's really important, like we'll walk slowly in the middle, and Sammy will try to angle to both sides. So if you can kind of squeeze in, you can even stand in the aisle so that everybody can get a chance to kiss the Sefer Torah. If it's not so important to you, my grandmother never liked kissing the Sefer Torah. She just didn't think it was to her style, for whatever reason. So that's also fine. But I just want to give everybody who wants an opportunity to kiss the Torah in the middle. And we'll see. This way, it just takes a long time to walk around that side and that side. If it doesn't work, then next year we will walk around both sides to make everyone happy. Okay? That makes sense, everyone? Yeah? Okay, good. All right, we're on the middle of page 67 with the Shema.
Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad.
Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad.
Echad Eloheinu Gadol Adonenu Kadosh V'Norah Shemo.
Echad Eloheinu Gadol Adonenu Kadosh V'Norah Shemo.
Gadol Adonai iti uneromem Hashemo yachdav. Lecha Adonai hagedula
V'Hagevura V'Tiferet V'Netzach V'Hamod Mikol HaShamayim V'Haaretz. if you have the Siddurim so you can get all of the Hebrew, it's on page 309. Some of the Hebrew appears in your booklets, some doesn't. But that's the way it is. Okay, we're on page 68 in the booklets. You should come up. And when you come up, you're going to give me your, if you know it, your Hebrew name and your parents' Hebrew names.
Moshe, Eliyahu, Yitzchak, Pinchas, and Moses.
Okay. Yamod,
Moshe,
Moshe,
Eliyahu,
Eliyahu,
Yitzchak,
Yitzchak, Pinchas, Ben,
Elazar, Chaim.
Elazar, Chaim.
Named after everyone.
Rishon.
Rishon.
Baruch Shenatan Torah Mo Yisrael. Em Avigenu Nayochem, Chaim Kolchem.
You
Yes?
just kiss the Torah here.
Baruch Adonai Baruch.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Olam Vaed.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Olam Vaed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Olam. Asher Bahar Banu Mikol Hamim V'natan Lanu Et Torto. Baruch Atah Adonai Notein HaTorah.
Amen. Vaydaber Adonai el Moshe acharei mot shnei bnei Aharon v'korbatam mifnei Adonai vayamutu vayomer Adonai el Moshe daber el Aron achicha v'ayavo b'chol eit el hakodesh mibeit haparochet el pnei hakaporet asher al Aron v'lo yamut ki be'anan erei al hakaporet Bezot yavar Aron el hakodesh mefar b'makar lachatat v'ayilel la ketonet bat kodesh yilbash umilne sevad yihiu al besaro uvnet bad yachkor v'tznevet bad yitznof b'dei kodesh hem rechatz b'mayim besaro v'sham ume'et adat b'nei Yisrael yikach shnei sreizim lachatat v'aylecha le'olah v'ikriv Aron et parachatat asher lo v'yachivir b'yado v'yad beito.
Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Olam Asher Natan Lanu Torah Emet V'Hayei Olam Natav Etochenu. Baruch Atah Adonai Notein HaTorah.
Amen. Shkach.
Yamod, Noach, Chaim, Ben Chanoch, Upnina, Sheni.
Just kiss the Torah here with your toes.
Baruch Adonai Baruch.
Baruch
Adonai Baruch Olam Vaed.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Vaed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher Bachar Banu Mikol Ha'amim V'natan Lanu Et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen. V'lakach et shnei serim v'midotam lifnei Adonai petach hamoed v'natan Aron ashnei serim goralot goral echad Adonai goral echad Azazel v'ikriv Aron et asira shel alav v'goral Adonai v'esahu chatat v'esayir asher alav v'goral Azazel yamad chai לפני אדוני לכפר עליו, לשלח אותו, לעזאזל המדברה, ויקריב אהרון את פרחתת אשר לו, ויחבר בידו ויד ביתו, ושחט את פרחתת אשר לו. Just kiss it here again.
Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher Natan Lanu Torah Emet V'chayei Olam Natav B'tochenu. Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Just swap spots.
Yamod Avraham, Naftali, Ben Shalom, V'ched V'ashlishi.
Baruch Adonai Hamavorach.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Olam Vaed.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Vaed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher Bachar Banu Mikol Hamim V'natan Lanu Et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. ולקח מלוא המחתה יחלי האש מעל המזבח מפני אדוני ומלוא כפניו כתור צמים דקה והביא מבית הפרוכת ונתן את הקטורת על האש לפני אדוני וכיסון על הקטורת את הגפורת אשר לעדות ולא ימות ולקח מדם הפר ויזע באצבעו על פני הכפורת קדמיו לפני הכפורת יזה 7 פעמים מן הדם באצבעו ושחט את סיר החטאת אשר לם והביא את עמו אל מבית הפרוכת ועשה את עמו כאשר עשה לדם הפר ויזע אותו על הכפורת לפני הכפורת וכיפר על הקודש מטומאות בני ישראל ומבישם לכל חטאתם וכן יעשה לאור המועד השוכן איתם בתוך טומאתם וכל אדם לא יהיה בו מועד בבואו לכבוד קודש עד זיתו וכיפר בידו ויד ביתו ויד כל קהל ישראל.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech olam asher natan lanu Torat emet v'chai olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
All right, normally, here. Yashikach, thank you to everybody who had an aliyah. In a regular and normal menu, we would read the Haftorah now, but instead we're just going to talk about it for a few minutes. It's on page 71. It's really one of the most, it's a passage from the book of Isaiah. Isaiah was probably one of the greatest, not just prophets, but poets that ever lived. And it really balances out the heavy ritual that we get on in our Torah reading, which is very ritual focused. And I just want to read some of it with you and then hear maybe your thoughts on it. Let's read from the middle of the passage. I want to read where not just the bold words, a few lines down in the bold words, where Isaiah writes, "Can this then be the fast that I have chosen? A day when man afflicts his soul, to bow down his head like a reed, to sit in sackcloth and ashes. Is this what you call a fast, an acceptable day to Adonai, to God? Behold, this is the fast that I have chosen, loosening the bonds of wickedness, undoing the straps of the yoke, sending the oppressed free, and breaking every yoke of tyranny. Break your bread with the hungry, and bring the impoverished into your home. Clothe the naked when you see them, and do not hide from your own flesh, from your relatives. Then will your light break forth like the dawn, and your healing shall come quickly. Your righteousness will go before you, and the glory of God will gather you up. Then when you call out, Adonai will answer. When you cry out, he shall say, I am here. If you remove from your midst the yokes, the stretching out of a finger and wrongful speech, if you reach out to the hungry and satisfy the afflicted soul, then your light shall shine forth in the darkness, and your deep darkness shall be as light as noon. Adonai will always guide you and satisfy your soul from thirst and make strong your bones, and you shall be like a watered garden and like a never-failing spring of water." So what's Isaiah saying? Any thoughts? What's Isaiah trying to say? What is this mistake that people are making? You look at that. What do people seem to think? Yeah, they seem to think that all you need to do to have favor with God is just don't eat, maybe do some kind of afflicting of yourself, but you can go along and continue what you were doing, and as long as you fulfill that ritual goal of not eating for the day, God will listen to you, and whatever it means exactly, your light will break forth, right? That's what people think. And Isaiah, I mean, the words are beautiful. This is not the fast that I chose. This is not what God does not want ritual without meaning. God doesn't want people to fast and think that you can just not eat for the day and go along with your life, right? You need, what are the things, what is the fast that really counts? right? It's sharing your bread, sharing the things that you have with people who are hungry. It's providing clothes, basic needs for other people. It's helping your relatives when they're in times of need. It's getting rid of tyranny, fighting against tyrannical forms of government, and basically what we consider acts of loving kindness, things that help other people in the world. Now, some people have argued that what Isaiah means is he doesn't want you to fast. Instead of fasting, you should do that, those other things. But I don't think that's the traditional way of reading it. I don't think that's the correct way of reading it. What Isaiah is saying, that you need to do both, right? The fast, right, the rituals, the things that we do in the synagogue are supposed to bring a transformation. They're important, right? The rituals are not to be ignored, but they're not to be empty rituals, not accompanied by meaningful acts of change and helping other people. It is very easy to see not just other people. It's always easier to criticize other people. It's easier to think of ourselves as like, we do the rituals right, and that's what we're supposed to do. But that is clearly, when we think deeply about it, that is not the end of the meaning of the things that we do. And the rabbis put this Haftorah here to remind us that we had the Torah reading with its rituals, but we also need to remember that the acts of loving kindness, the tzedakah, the gemilut chasadim, that really helps other people. And together, that's what I think Isaiah means by saying, your light shall it's a beautiful image, your light shall shine forth in the darkness, right? That the light of the good things that you bring to the world, that are spurred on by what we do in the synagogue on Yom Kippur, will go out from this place and bring goodness and help to those who are in need in the world. So it's a deep, beautiful message. It's there. You can continue to read it. We are going to do the returning of the Sefer Torah, which is on page... Oh, no, we first need to... We need to lift the Sefer Torah. So where was my volunteer to lift and to wrap? Someone was going to wrap? Thank you. Okay, so please rise while we lift the Sefer Torah. We're gonna return the Sefer Torah on page 72.
Hallelujah, Shem Adonai,
Kiskav Shemone.
Eitz Chaim hi lama chazikim ba v'tomcheha meyushar deracheha tarchenom v'chol netivoteha Shalom Hashivenu Adonai Elecha Venashuva Chadesh Yameinu 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 Chadesh Yameinu Kekedem.
All right, we're going to move on. You can sit for a moment. We're going to move on to the Yizkor service. We will rise for part of it. If you have these booklets, the Yizkor service is not, I don't think there was enough for everyone. No, they're all gone from the front there? Okay. So maybe it can, if you have like 2 or 3 and you're like in a row, people share. I apologize that there's not enough for everyone. If someone else needs one, be at least for one for every 2 people, and we'll give you enough time. Great, thank you. Sorry for the technical difficulties. So the Yizkor is the part of the service that we do several times a year, in which we remember our family, in particular close friends who have passed, not just in the past year, but throughout our lives. It's an opportunity for us really to deeply reflect on on how much we miss them. I think the basic emotion when I think of people that I loved who are no longer with us, the first thing that goes through my head is just sadness, how I can't contact them anymore and how I miss them, and how I loved them while they were still here and appreciated them and the way they impacted my life and the life of my family. Many of you probably have gone through painful losses this year, the past several years. This is an appropriate time to be sad about that, to think about our own mortality, to think about the hope that we will be remembered, and that our lives they're not eternal, they're short, and we hope that we bring blessing and love and appreciation and goodness to our families, to our parents, to our siblings, to our children, to our friends, to our community, so that when we go on, someday they'll be standing here or other places and we'll look back and remember us for a blessing. That's, I think, what Yizkor is really about. It is okay to cry during Yizkor. There are times where it is totally appropriate and good to cry. So if you feel yourself emotional, that is, I think, perfectly normal and natural. We're going to read some of the readings. We're going to read together, and then we will we'll stand up. We'll do the beginning part sitting. We'll stand up. There are some individual pieces from page, let's say 15 through 18 or 20. There are individual memorials. You can say, we'll give some time silently. Say as many of these as you'd like. If you have both parents who've deceased, grandparents, friends, you can say one for each individual. If the Hebrew is difficult, you can say the English. And I think it's just appropriate to use your own words in your own heart to talk about their memory being a blessing, and whatever words come to your mind and thoughts come to your mind are entirely appropriate at that time. And then we'll conclude with Sammy will lead us in an El Maleh for all of the victims of the Shoah, the Holocaust, many of whom don't have anyone to say a memorial prayer for them. And I will read with you a memorial for the soldiers, the fallen soldiers in Israel, on page 21. So let's read together on page 13, a reading from Kohelet, page 13. To everything there is a season and a time to every purpose under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to pluck up that which is planted, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to break down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to cast away stones and a time to gather stones together, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to seek and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to cast away, a time to tear and a time to sow, a time to keep silence and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time for war and a time for peace. What profit has he who works in that which he labors? God has made everything beautiful in its time. He has also set eternity in their hearts. yet so that man cannot find out the work that God has done from the beginning, even to the end. I know that there is nothing better for them than to rejoice and to do good as long as they live. Also that every man should eat and drink and enjoy good in his labor in the gift of God. So let's rise on page 15 through 20. I'm going to invite you to spend a few minutes reciting these prayers to yourself, and then we'll gather together for the El Maleh on page 22. Sammy is now going to chant the El Maleh, which is found on page 22, the memorial for the 6 million Jews lost in the Shoah, the Holocaust.
El Maleh Rachamim Shochein Bamromim Hametzei Menucha Nechona Tachat Kanfei Ashchina B'malot Kedoshim Utearim Kizohar Arakiya Meirim Umahozirim Lenishmot Kol Haniftarim Bekilatenu Beit Shalom Ve'yetzachenu B'nei Yisrael Shenehergu Shenishachatu Sheniserefu Shenechneku O Shenikberu Chaim Bidei HaNatzim Ve'ezreihem Yemach Shemam Umaseru Navsham Al Kiddush Hashem Bavor Shekulanu Mitpalalim Leiloi Nishmoteihem Began Eden Tei Menuchatam Hana Balarachamim Yastireim Beseter Kenafecha Leolamim Mitzror Achayim את נשמותיהם. אדוני ונחלתם, ואנוכו ושלום על משקפם, ונאמר Amen.
I'm going to recite in Hebrew the Yizkor for the soldiers of Israel. I should add, I have one son who's currently in the Israeli Defense Forces. 2 of my children have already finished. And I hope we all join to pray for the safety of them, for the safety of their friends, and for peace, for eventual peace in Israel. יזכור אלוהים נשמות בניו ובנותיו הקדושים והטהורים, הנאמנים והאמיצים, חיילי צבא ההגנה לישראל בחירות היבשה, האוויר והים, ולוחמי המחתרות ואורי הגרדום והחטיבות הלוחמים במערכות העם, אשר חרפו נפשם על קדושת השם, העם והארץ, ונפלו כגיבורים במלחמת השחרור במערכת סיני, במלחמת ששת הימים, במלחמת התשה, בפעולות הגנה, תגמול וביטחון, ואת קדושי מלחמת יום הכיפורים העקובה מדם, ומאות הקורבנות הקדושים שנפלו במלחמת שלום הגליל, וחיילי ישראל, חיילים ואזרחים, אנשים ונשים וטף, שנפלו בידי המרצחים מארגוני הטרור בארץ ובחוץ לארץ. בעבור שכל קהל ישראל מתפעלים לעילוי נשמתם, זכר עקדתם ומעשי גבורתם לא יסופו מאיתנו לעולמים, ונפשותיהם תהיינה צרורות בצרור החיים, אין נשמות אברהם, יצחק ויעקב, ועם שאר צדיקים וגיבורי ישראל הקדושים שבגרעינן, ונאמר Amen. Let's read together the Mourner's Kaddish on page 23. יתקדש ויתקדש שמי רבה, בעלמא דברה חירותי וימליך מלכותי, בחיי חון וביומי חון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל, בעגלה ובזמן קריב ואמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך לעולם ומי ומיה. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתהלל ויתהלל שמי דקודשה בריחו. לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה דמירן בעלמא ואמרו אמן. יהי שלום ארמית שמיה וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו amen. May the memory of all of your loved ones and all of your family may it be for a blessing. You may be seated. I want to just finish with one more little text learning. We're going to do one vidui, one of the confessionals, and then we're going to finish up for today. So on page 81, there's a beautiful text on the bottom of the page, and I want to read with you. I think it's meaningful and expresses a lot about what tshuva is and things to think about going forth into the next year. This is in the Babylonian Talmud. What are the circumstances that demonstrate that one has completely repented? A question we might ask, like, how do we know? It's sort of inevitable. How do we know that we've changed? So Rav Yehuda said, for example, a prohibited matter came to his hand a first time and a second time, and he was saved from it, thereby proving that he has completely repented. Rav Yehuda demonstrated what he meant. If one has the opportunity to sin, hopefully this doesn't happen to you, with the same woman he sinned with previously, and at the same time, and at the same place. Right? Basically, what the Talmud is teaching us is it's really hard to know, like, when we've repented. Hopefully this example isn't relevant to everyone here, but the idea is that something happens, and last time we weren't able to do the correct thing, and this time we're presented with the same situation again, and this time we were able to do the right thing. More common possibilities for repentance is, I don't know, my sister did something that really ticked me off, and last time I flew off the handle, got mad at her. Not that this has ever happened to me, of course. I flew off the handle at her and got mad, and we didn't talk for a few weeks, but this time I ignored it. like water off a turtle's back. I ignored it, went on, and we had a great rest of the day and a great rest of the week. It's little things like that. It's like those things happen all the time. Little things happen all the time. And we're always, I think, often presented with an opportunity to just say, look, I did this last time. I can not do this again. Right? You can. And that's what I think the Talmud's talking about. And I hope that we all have those opportunities because it sure feels good. I think it feels really good to be presented with that opportunity to make the same mistake again and not make that mistake. And I think that we're built that way. Like we're built to internally feel better about ourselves when we improve ourselves. It's a beautiful feeling, and I hope that we can find that feeling many times this year. We're going to do one vidui. We're going to, let's stay on page 83. I think we're just going to sing the middle, right, together, and then we'll recite one paragraph, and then we'll move into Hayom at the very end. So page 83, please rise. This is, again, as we learned last night, an opportunity for each one to do a little of the gentle beating of the breast.
Alechei shechatanu lefanecha beyetzer hara, ve'alechei shechatanu lefanecha beyodim uvelo yodim, ve'al kulam velo haselichot slach lanu mechalanu kapelanu.
Let's turn to page 85. I want us to read together the paragraph I quoted from Rabbi Sidney Greenberg, a very well-known American rabbi, and then we're going to sing Hayom on bottom of page 85. Let's read this part together. Some of the saddest words too frequently spoken at the end of one's life go something like this. He worked so hard all his life, but never took the time to enjoy any pleasures. Now, when he can enjoy life, nit to kein Yoren, little Yiddish, he ran out of years. Whenever I hear this melancholy summary, I always ask myself, why? Why did he postpone the enjoyment of life? Why did he wait? Is it possible to enjoy at 60 the pleasures that are available only at 40? Does financial security enable us to retrace our steps and to do now what should have been done then and could only have been done then? Is there any way of rewinding and replaying the film of life? There is no future joy which can compensate us for the legitimate joys we needlessly deny ourselves today. God, our prayer book reminds us, is waiting for us to stop waiting and to proceed with all haste, to begin to do now, this day, all the things for which this day was made. Hayom.
Hayom, 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 te'amseinu.
Amen.
Hayom, 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 te'racheinu.
Amen.
Hayom, 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 tegadleinu. Amen. Hayom, 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 tidrashenu latova.
Amen.
Hayom, 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 techadesh aleinu shana tova.
Amen.
Hayom, 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 tishma shavatenu.
Amen.
Hayom, 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 techabel berachamim v'ratzon et tfilatenu. Amen. Hayom, 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 titmechenu bimin sidkecha. Amen.
Kaddish Shalem, page 86.
Yitzkadal v'yitzkadash shemei rabba, ve'alma divrach hirutei ve'amlich malchutei, ve'chayechon ve'yomechon, uchayei necho beit Yisrael, בגלה ובזמן קריב ויאמרו אמן יהי שמי רבה מבורך לעולם ולעמי עמיה יתברך יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקודש שמי דקודשה לילה לילה מכל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה דמירן מעלמה תושבחתה ונחמתה דמירן מעלמה ויאמרו תתקבל צלותון ובותון לכל בית ישראל קודם אבוהון דבי שמיה ויאמרו אמן ויאמרו יהי שלמה רבה מן שמיה וחיים וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ויאמרו אמן ויאמרו עושה שלום ממרומיו הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ויאמרו אמן.
Page 87, Aleinu.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי ארצות, ולא שמנו כמשכות אדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים, משתחווים ומודים, לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא, שהוא נוטה שמיים ויוסד הארץ, ומושב יקרה בשמיים ממעל, ושכינתו זו בגבי מרומים. הוא אלוהינו אין עוד, אמת מלכנו אפס זולתו, ככתוב בתורתו, וידעת היום, וישבת לבבך, כי אדוני הוא אלוהים, בשמיים ממעל, ועל הארץ מתחת אין עוד, ונאמר, והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד.
We're going to do the mourner's Kaddish. If you're reciting Kaddish for a loved one or a family member, you can join in. If not, you're welcome to stay seated or standing, whatever is your practice. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei rabah. Be'amad yivrach yiruteh v'yamlich malchuteh. B'chayechon uvyomechon uv'chayei dechol beit Yisrael. Ba'agara uvizman kari v'imru amen. Yehei shmei rabah mevorach le'olam umei umaya. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקודשה בריחו לעילה ולעילה מכל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה דמירן בעלמה ואמרו אמן. יהי שלום רבה משמיה וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. עושה השלום במרומיו הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. Before we conclude with the Don Olam, I want to again thank Sammy Moses for leading us in the tefillot and the prayers. And I want to thank everybody for coming over Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. This was a really beautiful experience for me. I really appreciate your being here, chance to learn with you, chance to hear from you, a chance to be your teacher. I've been teaching for 30 years, formed relationships with people all over the world, and to me, that's what teaching is about. It's forming a connection with students and a relationship that goes on for many years. I live in Israel. I work in Jerusalem. If you're ever around the center of Jerusalem, I work at a place called the Conservative Yeshiva. I won't probably remember everyone or remember everyone's name, but pop in there, say hello, tell me you're from Beth Shalom. It's a friendly place. We'd love to have you there, and I'd love to see you. It's very meaningful to me. And the synagogue, I want to thank the synagogue for doing this, thank the ushers for their help, and I hope we can do this again in the coming years. We would appreciate, I know, your feedback so that we can learn together and figure out exactly the best way to make this a beneficial and meaningful experience for everybody. So I want to wish everyone a Gemar Chatima Tova. There is Mincha and Ne'ilah tonight, not here, but in the main services. And we're going to conclude with Adon Olam on page 88.
Adon Olam Asher Malach B'terem kol Yetzir Nivra Le'ed Nasa B'chevtzo kol Azai Melech Shemo Nikra Ve'acharei Kichlot HaKol Levado Yimloch Nora Vehu Haya Vehu Ofer Vehu Yeh Betifara Vehu Echad Ve'en Sheni Le'am Shilo Le'achbira Beli Reshit Beli Tachlit Velo Aoz Ve'am Yisra Vehu Eli Ve'chai Goali Ve'tzur Chevli Be'etzara Ve'hu Nisi Umanosli Menat Kosi Beyom Ekra Beyado Avkid Ruchi Beitishan Ve'aira Ve'im Ruchi Geviati Adonai li Ve'lo ira.
Shana Tova, everyone.
Gemar Chatima Tova.
Gemar Chatima Tova. Shkah. Oh yeah, there are a couple talks in the synagogue this afternoon. I think their schedule is over there. I'm giving one of them. I don't remember what time, but the schedule's over there. I think they're occurring here actually, but later on, like at 2:30, something like that. Oh, thanks for coming. Oh, thanks for coming. Thanks for coming again. Nice to see you guys again. Bye guys. Shana Tova.
We're actually going to be in Israel
Oh yeah.
in December.
Oh great.
Yeah.
Do the family trip.
We're going
In advance of everything.
Yeah, everything.
I'm situated in the middle of Jerusalem. I don't live there, but there's a place. It's in the middle of Jerusalem. You can Google it, called the Conservative Yeshiva. If you're ever around there, just hopefully you'll have great. Oh, great! Thanks for coming and enjoy the trip.
And Aviva tutors better.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Has it. You can Google Josh Cole. You might find it. Oh, Conservative Yeshiva has my website there. So Adam. Oh, Shana Tova. Thanks for coming. Shana Tova. All right, Shana Tova, guys. Good to see you the whole time. Right here. It's really nice. Oh, it's really great. I'm so glad you guys came.
Meet with Israel.
I spoke to my nephew. He's like, oh, he's friends with you.